Well, it gives me great pleasure to welcome John Weston to the program. And John is an MP. He studied international relations at Harvard University, law at Osgoode Hall Law School. And believe it or not, is able to speak Mandarin as well as French and English. He worked as a lawyer in Canada and in Taiwan. Welcome, John.
Well, thanks, Ozzie. And what we're going to talk about ultimately comes down to relationships. It's relationship with physical, mental, spiritual health for sure, but the relationship between people that encourage them and keep them mentally active and challenged, as you do with everyone, is an underlying theme. And you and I got to know each other in a galaxy long ago, far away in Taiwan.
Yeah. Well, and you know, I was always amazed. We would have a Chinese Canadian come, and he couldn't speak Mandarin because he spoke Cantonese. And there's the white Canadian coming, Mr. Weston, and speaks fluent Mandarin. You know, I'm always amazed at how you adopted the new country so specifically.
Well,
But you
you
know,
know
you
that.
went from being an MP now into a public service and into health and fitness and a program that everybody talks about and few people actually do something about it. And you have grasped it by the scruff of the neck, and you're now the head of an organization that I want to get into. But it looks to me like you're a pretty healthy guy. I mean, were you always that healthy?
That's a great question. In fact, growing up, I missed a third of school through bronchitis and related problems. My granddad said I wouldn't make it to age 15. And I ran into a fantastic physiotherapist, and I'll never forget her. Her name was Margaret Rutherford. And she said, you should swim for your lungs, and you should do exercises for your muscular development. And she changed my life. And I'm very grateful that I had somebody like that in my life and parents who backed her up.
Yeah, and we all need a mentor type person that makes an impact on us, no question about it. I mean, you have done a lot of things in the public eye and health and fitness. Now, as an MP, you were talking about it. It isn't sort of you just adopted this today because you're not an MP, but you're now the leader of a non-profit organization. What tips do you have for individual people that want to get healthier?
By the way, I noticed you said that I was an MP and then I went into public service. I, that betrays a slight bias towards politicians that we'll all have to live with. And unfortunately, it's a justified one. Well, in terms of personal tips, I think that one of the most commonly read books, it was prescribed to me by my family doctor. It's called Younger Next Year. Really great one for your listeners. And it encourages people to engage in physical activity for sure. But the underlying theme from the authors is stick with people who encourage you. Ideally, a partner, ideally, a spouse. Not everybody's spouse, like mine, is a personal trainer. But if you have accountability to somebody, if you know that Henry or Tim or Phyllis expects you to show up for the walk or the run or the bike ride, you're way more likely to do it. And there's a joy that comes from that. There's a personal challenge that comes from that. And, you know, we started talking about relationships. I do think that physical activity and relationships have a lot to do with one another. So that's, I think, a really key tip. Another one is to make sure you know what you're doing. So you don't want to hurt yourself. If you're going to start lifting weights, don't go in the gym and start pressing 250 pounds or you're going to hurt yourself. So, you know, there's a real advantage to looking out for somebody who can train you to do things well. I remember doing a triathlon and I learned so much by signing up for a clinic at the YMCA. I made good friends, I learned techniques, and I learned more of the joy that came with the discipline.
Well, and it's true. But this is why I start with 3 pound weights, you know, because I don't want to overdo it, you know. I mean, but I do practice with 3 pound weights, you know.
You don't want to overachieve, Ozzie. You don't want to
Yeah,
over.
I was the other day with a friend of mine, and you know, he's my age, and he was talking. He just lives in the gym, you know. That's what he does. And he says, I'm now between 20 and 25 pounds. He says, what is it that you do? I said, well, I could progress to 5. I said, what do you mean 550? No, 5. Nobody does 5 pounds of weights. Well, I do anyhow. But I think what you said is so important. The thing is that mentally and physically, or mostly mentally, we're ready to do it. We think we understand you should do exercise. We understand walking is good. We understand everything. The problem is understanding means nothing. I've learned in my life that I make a brilliant speech and people come up to me and say, man, I'm going to change my life. And you see them 2 months later and say, so did you start? No, but I'll start next week. And there was a great book by Dr. Maxwell Maltz, who was a plastic surgeon. He would give a lady a new nose and a new chin. Well, he gave one a new nose and he did a great job, he thought. But she looked in a mirror and she didn't see it. She thought actually it was worse. Then he gave another lady a chin that wasn't really as good as he had hoped it would be. And she looked in the mirror and she loved it. And he realized all change is internal. It's in your head. No matter what he did with plastic surgery, really didn't matter. So he created this book, Psycho-Cybernetics, in which he said, it takes you 21 days to change a habit. So if you don't have any health habits, do something for 21 days. You know, the silly example I use in my speeches is, if you just went like this, John, humor me, try it. Now do it the other way. Sounds a little funny, or if you go like that and try and go like that, right? Now, these are silly habits. You've adopted the habit when somebody says, fold your arms, to do it in a certain way. If you wanted to change that, I don't know why, but if you did, it would take 21 days to do it every single day. On the 22nd day, you would do up and somebody says it, you would do it the other way. So that is true for running, for weightlifting, for having a plan, for meeting George at the gym at 10 o'clock on Tuesdays, all of those kind of things. They're habit-oriented. When I look out the window and see rain or shine, there's people running. They have developed a habit at that time of the day. That's what they do. And if we can just get our mind around that and saying that, hey, it's really relatively easy. 21 days, I can do that. And then do it, and all of a sudden we're in action.
We at the Canadian Health and Fitness Institute, we think on this tightrope. On the one hand, we don't want to advocate for a nanny state, a government that is telling everybody what to do with their specific routines day after day. More likely, empower individuals to equip themselves with those kinds of habits. On the other hand, we also think that there's been a real erosion in our culture of the kind of steadiness, the habits, the routines that lead to a good life, healthy, physically, mentally, and spiritually. And those, by the way, are the 3 legs of this stool that we think are really important. And when I say an erosion, I mean, no one was set about to undermine the character of Canadians. But at some point, we all started using our cell phones. We became more and more adept at using our computers. We became more and more likely to get to school or work in motorized transport. We spent, through the pandemic, more and more time on our screens. And all of these things have added up to a point where we have, an overwhelming majority of young people who don't get even the basic amount of vigorous physical activity a week. Health Canada suggests 150 minutes. It's just a minimum. It used to be in the classrooms, there was physical education, physical activity. And then another thing that happened in 1982, we removed those participation awards that were a big part of growing up when I was in school. You did chin-ups and sit-ups and push-ups and things like that. But somebody decided, because some of the kids couldn't do it, you would remove the program for all of the kids. And so what we have now is a generation where children are twice as likely as a generation ago to be overweight or obese, which means they have 14 times the likelihood of a cardio event. These things are all cumulative. Who doesn't know of somebody who's got a mental illness issue? There's some friend in your life, I'm guessing, who is really struggling with mental illness. That wasn't a big issue when I was growing up. And so some would say, well, it's just because people are now more open in talking about it. But our contention is that there's been a steady erosion of the routines that you talk about, Ozzie, the things that equip people to be physically, mentally, and spiritually healthy.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more, and I would actually argue it further. We have to insist, because we also have a society now without consequences. No matter what you do or not do, there are consequences. And you certainly in our real estate world, in our real estate club, first I enchant them with jokes. Then I'm determined, and then I threaten them, and then I shame them. because action is everything. You know, we talk and talk and we cite this expert and that expert. I mean, you go on YouTube, you go bananas figuring out you can't eat apples or grapes or you can't do anything. Everything is totally one-sided. Sugar is bad, butter is bad, milk is bad, it has to be vegan, has to be that. We can do that, but go for a walk every day, we don't do it. And that's why I'm saying you create the habit. If you're in the real estate investment business, if you don't learn anything, if you don't practice, if you don't know what your goals are and your objectives are, and that you don't have a greater purpose, like for your family, maybe for your grandfather, maybe for your kids to go to get a better degree in university and you can pay for it. And so I look at my youngest grandson, they take away the honor roll because they don't want to offend any of the other kids. Well, he worked very hard to get that special status. He should have been rewarded for it. Anyways, the point is we have a healthcare system. There's a lot of debate about the healthcare system, and some people complain, but the fact is that we have a pretty good healthcare system by some standards. But there's some things to worry about. What would they be?
Well, I would say the absence of physical education in the classrooms is an absolute brainless way to pull down a society. So it's essential for us to get physical education back into the routines of children. CHFI is just about to announce a joint venture with a platform called Go Get Fit. We're really excited about this because it takes students, parents, and teachers and aligns their schedules and gets physical exercise into the routines. We think that's really, really important. Another thing is that it baffles me, but we spend increasing billions of dollars on our so-called healthcare system. Sometimes I would characterize it as a sickness care system because we don't have any documented and systemic approach to preventive healthcare. We have a new minister of sport and physical activity. I'm delighted by this development. Carla Qualtrough was anointed with that title only in the last year, and she's a keynote speaker at the upcoming forum we're going to talk about in a second, I think. It's great. We now have a minister of physical activity. But do you think she has a playbook or a budget? There's nothing in the Prime Minister's mandate letter to his health ministers, and this goes back to my time as Stephen Harper. I'm not blaming Justin Trudeau for this only, although I must say I was more expectant that a youthful, fit Prime Minister would bring preventive healthcare more into our routines. He hasn't. But there's nothing in those mandate letters that says, Minister, it's essential to keep our healthy people healthy. What do you think is harder to do, to fix someone who's sick or to keep a healthy person healthy? The only thing is, it's hard for our politicians, and I've been there, to campaign on something where you don't get that sort of polarizing, divisive, immediate, explicit kind of result you can brandish in front of the electorate. So keeping healthy people healthy is visionary. It's important. It will save us between $7 and $25 billion a year, depending on which estimate you look at. But it's not necessarily something that the politicians have been drawn to. I'm hoping we'll change that. I would love to see in the next election campaign there to be a real long-term vision articulated by one or more of the leaders, saying this is insane. We're spending more and more on healthcare. We can't afford it, but we're not spending anything on preventive healthcare. Let's do it.
Well, that's why it's important to have that National Institute of Health and Fitness, because it encompasses everything, prevention being a big part. I mean, right now it's you're sick, you get a medicine. And so we have a huge drug institutions as well. You know, it's important to them that you stay sick. Well, maybe it's unkind to say that, but in a way, if I'm sick all the time, I need medicine. And also it's easy to prescribe that. But as you point out, prevention is everything. First class. But that's why, I mean, we have to talk about consequences to people. If you don't do that, what's going to happen to you? If people, a young person, I know my wife, she used to think when we were 20, she said, I want to die at 55, you know. I don't want to live any longer. Well, that's just how you feel until you're 54, right? But if you didn't do anything during that 50 years or that last 20 years, then you realize that to get to 60 or 70 is going to be a heck of a lot harder. You simply haven't got a choice. The consequence is going to be enormous. First of all, we're going to live longer. We already are living longer, men and women, right? And even in eating the wrong things, we're living longer. Now imagine if you wanted to live longer, healthy, and with a good mind and a fit body.
Oh, well, thanks for bringing that up. There's a terrific book, New York Times bestseller by a Canadian-American physician named Peter Attia. It's called Outlive. He makes the point that we have added bonus years to our lives, that for one reason or another, people are living much longer. Then he points out, but what if those last 10 or 20 years are miserable? Have you really gained something? So he's coined the term that pivots off lifespan. He coins the term health span. He says, let's make our health spans longer. And he encourages people to exercise. He says that's the best medicine. We're about to expand government taxpayer-funded pharmacare coverage in Canada. That's already underway. But he would say exercise is the best medicine. And then he would give you some specific examples. And we were talking about weightlifting earlier. He says, well, maybe Ozzie or John, you think that lifting weights is boring. And I confess, I've never really been drawn to the gym. But he says, what do you want to do when you're 75 or 80 or 85 years old? Think about it. Do you want to travel to visit your grandchildren? And most people would say, yeah, if I'm lucky enough to have them. Well, what does it mean? To get on a plane, you have to put a bag in the overhead rack. So you should be able to lift 15 or 20 pounds. So start thinking about that instead of why should I lift weights? Why should I go visit my grandchildren? Then it starts to make sense. You're including in your life some habits, some routines that not only make you healthier, but make you able to do the things you want to do with those bonus years. And so I commend the book Outlive. It's one of those things where I wish I could have written a book like that because he articulates.
I still have a lot of time. You can still
working on it.
I've told you that a long time ago. I guess a long time ago we made a tape together about working in Asia, which was of course a great success because you outsold me 10 to 1. I never forgive myself for doing that. But look, you were an MP, right? How easy is it to get change inside the government? I mean, you were there. So what did you do?
I worked on private members' bills that put me peculiarly in the #1 spot of all the 308 MPs. I got 2 private members' bills passed. Only one other MP did that during the time. People might think 2, that doesn't sound like very much. That's how many shoes I often put on in the morning. But that was the most any MP got through. One was on crystal meth, and the other was creating National Health and Fitness Day. And the National Health and Fitness Day one is maybe more relevant to our conversation today. It came out of the 2010 Olympic and Paralympic Games coming to the area I represented. And in seeing that, I just thought, wow, this pageant is coming to Vancouver, to Canada. We're spending billions of dollars to bring the Olympic and Paralympic Games. It's all over in 17 days. What should be the legacy? And Nancy Green-Rain and I came up with the answer. The legacy should be an increased amount of physical health for all Canadians. So not an emphasis on high performance athletes, but on the everyday Canadian. And then out of that came this parliamentary fitness initiative. So I got MPs running together on a Tuesday with a coach and swimming together on a Thursday in the Chateau Laurier pool. Again, with the former coach of Canada's Olympic swim team. And the whole idea was not just to get these representatives, these leaders, healthier, but to make them think of themselves as role models for the nation.
Examples.
Like Parliament or not, it's the only place where you have representatives of every corner of Canada all in one place. And sure enough, people came together. Elizabeth May dropped 40 pounds. She was so proud and so excited from her swimming, which she'd taken up after many years of absence. And decorum improved in the House. I always said that if a conservative can be teaching an NDP member how to do a spin turn in the pool, then decorum has to improve. And it did. So there were relationships, and because I worked in such a nonpartisan way, it made it possible to do something which was very hard in that time, to get a private members bill through. And so now in perpetuity, the first Saturday in June every year is National Health and Fitness Day, when local governments around the country encourage their citizens to come out, try something new, bring a friend, start moving, get physical activity to be part of your life. So this year is June 1st, National Health and Fitness Day. And that's one of 3 days when our institute is having a real spectacular forum on health and fitness.
Well, and I think that's good. First of all, you need to be congratulated for doing that. It's certainly a feather in your cap to have started it, initiated that, and now you're heading up this private organization of Canadian Health and Fitness Institute. What exactly is the institute?
It's in legal terms, it's a charitable foundation, which means that donors get a tax receipt when they contribute funds. We also have sponsors who like the growing circle of followers that we have. Our institute's committed to a very specific mission. We're trying to make Canada the fittest nation on earth by 2030. So we've got a time frame. You like time frames in the business plans that you encourage, Ozzie. I know that. We have 35 directors and advisors from around the country. The Governor General is our patron, and we have 9 specific projects that are designed to create measurable change in physical activity and physical and mental and spiritual health. Those projects include a hut-to-hut trail system, which would involve the replication of the prototype hut that we have just finished in specifying. So we've got the specs ready. These would be cheap, easy to build, and we hope there will be hundreds or thousands of them around the country over the next few decades. The idea is you get people out on their trails, walking, running. Instead of being lonely, you call up a friend and go for a walk to your hut. And so it brings together all those elements of physical, spiritual, and mental health. We envision a National Adventure and Innovation Center, which would be a place where you teach the teachers, educate the educators, coach the coaches in matters of physical health and fitness. And like the Statue of Liberty, not everybody who is inspired by the statue goes and lays eyes on it in person. This National Adventure and Innovation Center, we think, will be a functional center somewhere in the country, but it will inspire all Canadians because we will know that this is part of our ethos. And as JFK did in creating the Youth Corps in 1961, he changed American culture in a very positive way. So our goal is no less than changing Canadian culture. Mm-hmm. We want the world to know that we are a community of people who are physically, mentally, spiritually healthy. We welcome the world the way we do, not just for our natural resources, for the education we offer our youth, and for the great opportunities at work and play that we have in Canada, but because we are a healthy nation, we can do so much better than what we're doing now. And we can't do this alone, Ozzie. Make no mistake, we don't pretend to be the only answer to the plight in which Canadians find themselves now, but we want to inspire a whole array of kindred spirit organizations that will work with us.
Well, and certainly makes a lot of sense. To me, I'm always coming back to that. We have to instill not just the vision and the dream and talk about it. We have to have a credible goal setting, a measurement, habit forming, because we talk. We talk and talk, and it's not enough. And when you take a look at our whole country, we seem to hit, we're sitting back. Our productivity level as a nation in the G7s, we're last. In terms of the things that we do, we don't really have a goal to do that. I mean, I just got a great kick out of the federal government employees don't want to work, go to the office for 3 days. I mean, if I was your branch manager, I'm sorry, you be there. I know that people do what you inspect with respect. They don't do what you expect. You expect them to sit at home and working very hard. No, they sit in their pajama having a cup of coffee. I wouldn't, I love Mr. Musk. He wasn't always my favorite, but he took 9,000 people, brought them down to 2,000. And the company's doing better than before. There's a message there somewhere that working at home. Anyways, that's my hobby horse.
Well,
But
I like the message that you and your friend Michael Campbell do year after year. You inspire people to do a good thing by supporting the Special Olympics. And what do? You have fun while you do it. You could have said, Special Olympians need our help. Please donate money, and people might do it. You do that, but you also say, let's have some fun. We're going to go and jump into a cold ocean, and we're going to do it in our lederhosen in your case. And then you bring a crowd of people along with you, some wearing peculiar costumes, and you get people jumping into the water. And so that's a form of physical activity. It's it's fun, it's silly, but it's for a good cause. And meanwhile, you're saying, Canadians, get out, do something in the outdoors. So, there's something really wonderful about the way you and Michael do that.
Well, and you joined us in our past premier. Gordon Campbell joined us, and we had, all of a sudden it attracts different people. And we also had the neighbors join us. The idea is fine, but I tell you honestly, it is no joy to run into that cold water. It isn't. I try to stay in as little as possible, and these people pay a good donation to see me totally dunked. And then, in fact, one year we did it, and I said, "Your head wasn't underwater." I mean, really? You're watching my head? Really? But now I have this extra duty. I got to actually go totally submerged. The funny thing is, it is fun. Mike and I did this during COVID, and the crowd wasn't there. There was him and me and a camera. And he goes into the water, he comes out, he says, "How is my hair?" That absolutely killed me. So you're right, you can have fun too, but
Yeah.
the difference an autistic child makes to a family that all of a sudden learns how to swim, or it isn't just that child, the whole family is benefited. And I think that's what health is important. And if it's prevention is important, all of the things that you stand for, I salute. Okay, so the big question is always, how are you funded?
Oh, well, not enough. Uh, we did receive one federal grant, which was fantastic. Not only did we get some money to help us do the basic things that we do, but it also gave us credibility. We have corporate sponsors like TELUS and community sponsors like Rotary, and then there are individual sponsors. A sponsor and a donor are different. So a sponsor hopes to get some commercial advantage by being associated with us. And we are in talks with banks and some of the companies that have corporate social responsibility issues and want to promote health and fitness. There's a growing realization, especially in the mental illness world, that we need to do something to reverse this tide, especially among young men, of mental illness, depression, and anxiety, which is unfortunately twinned with substance abuse and suicide. So we have corporate sponsors, generous donors. We're just getting to the stage, I think, where after thousands and thousands of hours of volunteer time, people know we're here to stay and we're making a difference. We have specific projects. The mayor of West Vancouver has just issued a great support letter that relates to the forum we're doing in West Vancouver. Very ambitious forum, the first of its kind, and it will be an annual event. We're moving to Toronto next year. So, but we certainly welcome people who care about the things we care about to donate their time or their money or come on as sponsors. We welcome that. And so far, it's a volunteer-driven organization that could really use more seed money to do the things we want to do. Just requires more infrastructure.
Well, but the other thing too is, and it's no small thing. You have a tax advantage by donating as well. It's a accredited organization. So now you talk about the forum, which is taking place May 28, June 1, and June 2 in
Yeah.
Vancouver. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about it. What is the forum?
I'm so excited that we have such high caliber people from all over Canada, from an array of different backgrounds coming together. One common theme, they have a passion to improve health and fitness. So we have from Canadian Olympic Committee, for instance, Andrew Baker, who will be in town for one of the days. Jay Bawa, who is the architect, who is one of a small team responsible for renovating Parliament buildings. The visionary who created the logo behind me, that's Jay Bawa, brilliant guy. We have Madison Maley, one of the girls in the boat, the gold medalist from Tokyo. She'll be speaking at the session focused on youth. One of the best sessions, I think, is going to be walk with your dogs. So there was a great moment when one of our supporters misheard it and had his poodle all lined up. And we said, no, it's not walk with your dog, it's walk with your doc. So we have 15 physicians coming out who will be walking through Park Royal with audience members after we hear from 4 inspirational people who deliver health and wellness kinds of services in the classrooms in the schools of West Vancouver. Our keynote speaker is the person I mentioned earlier in the show, Carla Qualtrough, who's the first ever minister of physical activity. And our institute has drafted a 23 point list of recommendations. It's basically a blueprint on how to make Canada the fittest nation on earth by 2030. So we'll be presenting that to her. And she's a Paralympian herself, perfect person for her role. There's a theme on mental health. We've got Dr. Silke Cresswell, who heads the brain wellness program at UBC, a world-renowned academic who's a great outdoors woman herself, and Marco Costamo from Sanctuary Ministries, who is a leader in his own right, environmental leader, social justice leader, who will confide in the audience his own struggle with mental health. He's very brave and doing a fantastic service by letting us know about what he has gone through himself. We've got the head of the Trans-Canada Trail coming, the head of BC Parks and Recreation. So these are people who have listened to a universe of voices on physical, mental, and spiritual health who are all coming together. As you said, Ozzie, it starts May 28th. So that session is at the West Van Community Center in the evening. That's this Tuesday. And then we flip over to June 1st, which is National Health and Fitness Day. There's a morning session, walk with your docs, and then the afternoon we hear from the minister and others. That session is called How Active Living Reduces Acute Care and Chronic Illness. It's basically exercise is medicine. And then on the Sunday, we have an emphasis on youth, how to get youth active in a digital world, which I think will be big impact. That will be at a high school with some fantastic speakers. And we've got some great musicians. So Juno award-winning musician, singer-songwriter from Bowen Island, Sherry Ulrich, who's one of my favorite singers in the world. She'll be performing. She's fantastic. Yeah. And then Dana Powell, who just released a CD at Christmas time. She's coming in from Indiana. She'll be singing as well at one of the sessions. So it's going to be great. And Ozzie, guess what we're charging for tickets?
$100?
We're not charging anything. We're just saying, come, enjoy, learn, be inspired. And of course, we would love it if people saw what we were doing, figure there's value in it, and support the foundation financially.
Well, look, it sounds like an exciting, really exciting 3 days. Not only is it a start of a focus on 2030, you know, you have the first time a minister makes a speech on it, you know, on health.
Ozzie, this is the first speech by a minister of physical activity on National Health and Fitness Day in Canadian history. So this is a landmark kind of an event.
Yeah, and I think that everybody should make every effort to come there. And I want to thank you for taking the time to explain it all to us and share your passion with us. Now, if people wanted to know a little bit more about it, where would they go? What is the website?
Thanks for asking. So our website where you can register, and you have to register. The tickets are free, but you have to register. It's CHFI.FIT. So C for Canada, H for health, F for fitness, I for institute, CHFI.FIT, FIT. And
Not .com or .ca behind it, just
it's .fit. So yeah, I'm glad you asked that. And if people are interested in becoming a sponsor, and we think there's a great role for sponsors, I welcome them to contact me personally. And they can write me at john.weston@chfi.fit. Again, that's john.weston@chfi.fit.
And everybody that's watching the video, of course, below in the comment section, we have the link, and we have a little bit more information about the organization and about John's involvement in it. And those of you that listen to us on the podcast, thank you very much. Again, it's chfi.fit. That boy is very important because we're so used to .com or .ca. And if you forget that, you can always write to info@ozbuzz.ca. John, thank you very much for taking the time. You
Ozzie,
want some closing remarks?
Well, yeah, and I was just going to say we have a slogan, and the slogan relates to a digital challenge. It's called Let's Move Canada. And I'd like people to remember that. On June 1st, we launch our Let's Move Canada challenge. We're trying to gather 500,000 hours of registered physical activity in June with our Indigenous partners. So that's another one of our activities, and there's prizes, and so people should look for Let's Move Canada. Let's Move Canada.
Sounds like a most worthwhile endeavor. And again, thank you very much. Take care, all the best, and go if you can at all make it. Go and become fit. And yes, I'm gonna move from 5/8 to 8.
All right. Well done, Ozzie. Thank you.